The Baggies Podcast, giving you the latest news, views and opinions on all things Albion. Now available on YouTube, Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
Hello Baggies fans, welcome to another episode of the Baggies Podcast. It's episode 35 today. It's a bit of a milestone, I suppose, but this is an absolute corker of an episode, if you will. The first part of the episode is me talking about the match against Newcastle, and then a little bit of a preview towards the game against Crystal Palace next week. That's the down bit, but then we go to an all-time high as we welcome, in part 2 of the episode, Richard Sneekes, West Bromwich Albion club legend, to the podcast. We chatted about a week ago or so about his time at the Albion, his thoughts on the current squad as well. So yeah, that's going to be an interesting interview. Hopefully you all enjoy, and hopefully you're all going to stick around for more episodes, because there's plenty more from where that came from. But yes, Richard Sneekes joins me on the podcast in part 2. But first, you got well, unless you fancy skipping ahead, but I wouldn't advise it. You got to listen to me for just a few minutes about the match recently. But if you're new around here, make sure you're following the podcast, subscribing to the podcast, doing whatever you can to support us. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, even leave us a lovely review on Apple Podcasts. That would be lovely. If you were to do that, you can just give us a 1-star and say how bad we are, or maybe just give us 5 stars and say how good you think we are. Either one works. Just let me know what you think. But yes, Richard Sneekes joins us in part 2. But before that, let's get straight into some match reaction from the Newcastle game. Yeah, of course, that game at Newcastle. Just a frustrating affair. I mean, the one against Everton, if you want to watch my match reaction to that, I posted a post-match reaction video on YouTube. If you want to just go and listen to that, just go and check out my YouTube channel and you can listen to what my thoughts on that. In terms of Newcastle, just so frustrating, such a frustrating draw. You just wanted to get some of the players and just shake them and tell them to get on with it. You need to win this game. It didn't. I think they were probably tired, to be honest, but that's when you need substitutes coming in. I mean, it's just such a frustrating affair. We had a couple of chances in front of goal, not too many, to be honest, not loads. But for me, you've got to be throwing the kitchen sink at that game. You've got to be throwing all hands to the pump in the attacking third, and I don't think we were. Whether that's down to the manager, I think it probably is down to the manager in that case, but then I think the players also need to probably step out of their comfort zones that the managers put them in. I mean, that's probably a big ask, to getting them to step away from not what the managers. Just go for it. You know the severity of the result in that game, and they didn't think to act upon it. But yes, a very frustrating affair against Newcastle, in my opinion. I just think we could have done so much more, and we could have really thrown a bit more at it. I think everybody was really tired from midweek, but how we didn't make a substitute until the 84th minute, I think that's personally Big Sam's fault. I think he got things really wrong there. At about 60 minutes, you should be looking and saying, we haven't got a goal yet. Fair enough, we've had a go. But now people are looking tired and they're looking really jaded. We need to get people off. We need to put some fresh legs on. They might not be as good as, the fresh legs might not be as good as the, players on the pitch, but at least they're fresh legs, and at least they're going to bring something else to the game and, just give us something a bit more energy and pace. In terms of the lineup, we went for an unchanged one from midweek, which I guess you could have got around, but had to sort of do in the end because of the way that this is such a must-win game for us. We went for Johnston in goal, Furlong, O'Shea, Bartley, Townsend, Yokeshlu holding the midfield, Pereira, Gallagher, Maitland-Niles and Phillips in the front four behind Diagne. It's unchanged, as I said. If we go through the lineup, and I'll just tell you sort of my player ratings. In terms of Johnston, I thought he made a couple of really good saves. I think he had to make one from, I think it was from Willock. I think he made one from Joel Linton as well. So it was a difficult game for Johnston. I mean, the back four played really well. I don't think they could have done much more about anything that happened in that game. I think it was the final third quality that was really causing the problems for us. Furlong played okay, I think. I don't think he was quite as good as Townsend, who I thought was exceptional today, by the way. Thought he really played well. Whipped some nice crosses into the box. O'Shea in the middle of the back four got absolutely left running through treacle in the first half by Joel Linton. Kyle Bartley, in terms of the centre-back next to him, I thought he was really good. Made a sort of goal-saving tackle, actually, midway through the game as they looked to sort of pass it across the goal and make an opportunity, which is where that O'Shea got left in treacle, actually. But they tried to pass it across, and Bartley made a really good intercepting tackle. Yokeshlu, he's just far too good for us. I mean, I don't know what he's doing. I don't feel bad for him because obviously he's chosen to come here and knows the situation, but somebody should have noticed that he's such a great player before us, surely. Nobody's trying to sign him. Nobody was trying to sign him in January. I'm really confused. He could be playing easily European football next season, Europa League. I'd love to see him back, but he won't be coming down to the Championship with us, I'm afraid. He'll be playing top 10 Premier League football. Should be playing top 10 Premier League football. I don't think he gets into any of the top 6 teams, but the current top 6 in the league, but I think he should be playing up there in the top half, certainly. Absolutely phenomenal again, just essential to the game. The only person in that game who looked to have a bit of quality on them. I mean, he's not the player who's going to make defence splitting balls. I'm sure we're all aware of that by now. But he's certainly the player who can just have a bit of composure in the midfield, a bit of intelligence. I think it's just fantastic to see him. And thank God we get to see him for another couple of months. At least that brings us a little bit of joy. Pereira, oh my. You won't need me to tell you that he wasn't great. He wasn't great in the Everton game, wasn't great in this one. I just thought he really lacked his creative spark. The final ball just wasn't there for us today. And I think when he goes missing, it's clear that the rest of the attacking third actually does as well. I think that's sort of testament to what's been going on. But yeah, Pereira not on it today, not on it again today. I don't want to. Yeah, I think a lot of fans have been a bit over dramatic about his performance. I think a lot of fans have been going, "Oh no, Pereira, he's finished. We need to sell him. He's not good enough for us anymore." He just had a couple of bad games. I'd still keep the faith with him, of course, but he's certainly not been hitting the heights that he has been, and that's quite disappointing to see. Gallagher ran himself ragged. It's just. That player, he's just always running, always working hard, always putting a shift in. Not the best technically and quality but still will give you 100% for your team. Maitland-Niles, he's becoming a bit of a confusing player for me. I like him. I like the way he plays. I like he adds a bit of composure alongside Gallagher because Gallagher's really erratic and just runs everywhere. So Maitland-Niles, I think it's good to see him having some composure, but some of the balls he picks are just a bit odd. So, there's an obvious pass out wide, but he'll try and thread the pass through the eye of the needle, and then it will just go all wrong. I think sometimes he makes the wrong. I think it's his decision making essentially. I think he does complement Gallagher really well, and obviously with Yokoshlu behind him, that's a Premier League midfield 3 in my opinion. Phillips out wide wasn't bad again. I didn't think he was bad in midweek actually, but I thought he was quite good today. Yeah, I thought he put in some really good crosses. We saw him running at people. I mean, crikey me, it was really good to see from Phillips, to be honest. Diagne up front, I feel for him, but his finishing is not there, I don't think. I think his hold-up play, his general link-up play, I think that's clearly a key aspect of his game, which is actually quite the opposite of what if you watched a video that I did on the YouTube channel a few months ago when he signed, or a couple of weeks ago, months ago, whatever it was, I actually spoke about how I noticed from the stats and from what Galatasaray fans were telling me, say that he'll do nothing else for you, but he'll score. And actually, he's doing everything else for us but score. So that kind of contradicts what I originally analysed from him, that he wasn't winning many aerial duels in Turkey. He wasn't particularly linking the play well, but he was getting the goals. However, it's completely the opposite. Whether that's Sam's management, whether that's how he's worked things out. Yeah, basically, that's what I've got to say about the team. But yeah, Diagne, his finishing wasn't there. But as far as team performances go, it's an okay one, to be honest. It wasn't the worst I'd seen us play in quite a while. I think the chances created, Phillips had a gilt-edged chance he should have finished off. But apart from that, did we create much in the game? I think we lack a bit of creativity, in my opinion, in terms of the what do I mean? The variety in our attacking play. It just seems the same cross over and over again, just hoping it's going to fall down to somebody. I get that's what we've got. I guess we've got an aerial presence in the box to try and aim at, but I think sometimes you need to be a bit smarter. Newcastle, the centre backs had great games because you just kept throwing the same crosses at them. They just had to stand in the same place every time, knowing full well that nobody was going to touch them, and just head the ball away every time. In terms of I just think we lacked a lot of variety. I think nobody really shined today. I think Pereira, when you need him to shine the most, that was just today. I think Everton, you can let that go. You weren't expected to win that one, but not expected to win this one, but you needed to win this one, and you haven't. So that in my accounts is the book closed for me in terms of survival, unless you go on some sort of mad winning run, which I am holding out absolutely no hope for. You can't win that game. You can't win any, to be honest. You can't win the amount that you need. I think that game's crying out to be won. It's crying out to somebody to take it by the scruff of the neck and nobody did, in my opinion. I don't think anybody did. In terms of your guys' thoughts, let's hear what you thought about the game. Firstly, let's get our man of the match out the way. Let's get who you thought played the best in this particular game. I mean, there's a few candidates. I gave you the candidates of Yokeshlu, Bartley, Gallagher, and Yokeshlu. You went for Yokeshlu at 74%. I thought he played really well. It's just composed in the midfield. How we've ended up getting in him is completely ridiculous. I can't believe he even agreed to come near us. But yeah, played really well. Craig says, nobody really shined today, nowhere near that enough desire to win a game like that. And I put, no urgency or quality whatsoever. It actually reminded me of a lot of the Huddersfield game last season, where the game's crying out for somebody to take the game to you. And you need to just pick up a result no matter what way you do it, and you need to keep throwing the kitchen sink at it, and we didn't, and we just sort of sat back and we were sort of like, should we have a little go now? Should we have a little go with 5 minutes to go? The substitutes Allardyce brought on, I mean, Grant I can half get, but Robinson, what's he doing? What's he been doing in training? Has he been like punching Sam in the face all training session? Is that what he's been doing? Must hate him, seriously. Honestly, Robinson, how he's not getting in that team, or at least making a substitute appearance, is ridiculous to me. I think he at least add something more direct. But Kanu coming on for Diagne, I understand Diagne had to come off. He was shattered. Shattered, the boy was. But he needed some help, to be honest. Diagne needed Robinson running around. He needed somebody to run around. I think Grant coming on wasn't so bad. I think just the Robinson one, I think, how you could even think about leaving him out. But, I think the club, I don't think it's Allardyce's fault. I think the tactics, be it today, were a little off, but I think he's still got us playing some reasonable way, and we're still progressing as a team, sort of. But I think the recruitment behind the scenes has got to have a look at. At under 18, got beaten 7-1 by Crystal Palace today. That's ridiculous. I mean, of all the things I thought we'd have, is that our academy would be really good, and we've got players coming through that are at least going to put things straight if we find ourselves in a bit of a mess. But there's not that anymore. Players are evacuating this club because of the way that the way that the academy's been, the way that people are just shipping players out. There's no clear vision for the club. Academy players are running. There's so many players. I know Morgan Rogers moved to Man City, but Louis Barry moving to Barcelona. I know they're big clubs, but surely if you've got a real structure in place that's going to say you're going to be in my first team plans over the next couple of seasons, then they're not going to have it. They're not going to want to leave. But there's just no structure in the club. I don't know what the clear vision is. There's no clear vision. I don't know what the vision is at the moment at the club. Are we going to go forward? Are we going to try and come back straight up? Are we going to stick with Sam? Are we going to not stick with Sam? Are we going to find somebody else? Are we going to revert playing styles again? Because we keep changing the playing style, and we keep changing the personnel in the squad, bringing in players to suit that style, and then we end up having to ship them out again. It's a real bad cycle for the club to be in. Look at Brentford, look at Norwich, look at the way that they're setting their team up. They're sticking with the same style. They know what they want. They know the end goal. It might take them a bit of time to reach it, but they certainly are throwing all the guns at that particular style. They're not thinking as soon as Daniel Farke got them relegated, bottom of the league, probably, even though they played some nice football, probably the worst team in the league that season. They weren't saying, Daniel Farke, out you get, that's you done, you got us relegated now. They're keeping faith because they know that he's got the capability to build on that. They've got an ethos that they follow, but we don't. We just keep teetering between the same different philosophies. We teeter between Allardyce, we teeter between Bilic, we teeter between Pulis, we teeter between Pardew. It's just a silly way to do things. We need a clear vision next season, and I want to hear it. I want to know what it is. I want to know from people who are inside the club what this vision is, because I'm not seeing one at the moment, unfortunately. I think it just stinks of disorganisation and lack of care for the club, in my opinion. But that's my thoughts on the current situation at the club. And of course, you guys have been sending your thoughts in. Let's just read out this one tweet from Andy Poole, who says, he has said, at the Baggies Pod, if we get to a point of not being able to survive, do we drop all the loan players that won't be with us next season and develop the players we have ready for the Championship? What's the point of developing other players from other clubs, or rather than our own? So, in answer to that, I said, yeah, that's a fair point. I just think as long as we can survive mathematically, we have to play the best players. Yeah, I stand by that. But I think after we get relegated, because it's coming, it's just it's like the Grim Reaper. It's just waiting at the door for us, to be honest. We just keep evading it slightly every week. But I think as soon as we're relegated, I think you either need to stick with Sam. If that's your decision, fair enough. I'll get behind it. He's not that bad of a manager, but I think he's going to have a challenge to stay. I don't think he'll want to stay with this, be it. But that's what he wants to do. That's what he'll do. But then once you've decided, you need to say to Sam, right, Conor Gallagher, or Conor Gallagher could be here next season. I don't know. But Maitland-Niles is not going to be with us this season. Probably Yokerslu. I want to see Yokerslu play. I like him. But if you say, you think about Maitland-Niles, do you think, well, I'm sorry, mate, but you're not going to be, you're not in my plans next season. You need to just prepare for next season, I suppose is what I'm saying. Get players like Edwards in. Maybe play somebody like, the youngsters in the academy. Give Chait Diaby a go. Maybe just try something different. The players that aren't going to be with us this season are no use to us once we're relegated. They were here to keep us up. And they haven't failed. I think the club has failed as a whole, to be honest. But that's my thoughts on the situation at the club and, of course, the Newcastle game today. But from one game to another, it's Crystal Palace next week. You can find a full match preview coming later in the week on the podcast YouTube channel. But just my original thoughts just after the Newcastle game, ahead of this Crystal Palace game, I think it's going to be a really difficult one. I think we need to go and pick up 3 points. There's no excuse for not putting in a really good performance next week. You're still in it, supposedly. I mean, it's looking further and further away with every game that's just pittering on by. I think we need to get a win, but I think Palace are a decent team. Obviously, they're just about to play Spurs as I'm recording this, so you'll know the result of that by then, and you'll know whether they're coming in poor form or bad or good form after just rolling over Spurs or something. Hoping they don't. I've got Kane and Son in my fantasy team, but I think Crystal Palace, they just need to, Crystal Palace are safe, but I think West Brom need to start to look a bit more positively at things. I think they need to think that we're going down, so let's play some nice, younger players who are going to perhaps keep us up. Or do you say, right, we're throwing all guns at it, we need to play the better way and try and get wins out of things? I just don't think today we got things right at all. Whether that's Sam's fault, whether that's anybody else's fault, but they were absolutely shattered. I don't think Sam can complain about game time if he's not bringing on anybody. Game scheduling, if there's nobody coming on until the 84th minute. I think that was ridiculous. But I think the Premier League, they were wrong to schedule that game right in the middle of midweek just to cater for Everton's cup run. It's not our fault that they're on a cup run. I just think that this season is going to be just over within the next few games. I think we'll probably go and draw 0-0 at Crystal Palace or 1-1 at Crystal Palace, and then after that, I think that's all your winnable games. That run of 4 winnable games that you've managed so far, you've managed 5 out of a 9 points available, which doesn't sound so bad. Normal form, that's normal circumstances, that's good. But when you're about to go down, I don't think it is. But yes, that's my thoughts on Crystal Palace next week. I'm going to go for a 1-1 prediction. I think that's just a safe way to play it. But yeah, if you want to go and check out the match preview for that, it'll be on the YouTube channel over the next few days. However, from some bad news to some good news, we're welcoming Richard Sneekes, West Bromwich Albion, club legend, cult hero, whatever you want to call him. He's joining me on the podcast. Well, he did. It was before the Brighton game. So if you hear us talking about the Brighton game, I wasn't sure exactly when I was going to put this out, but just a disclaimer, if you hear that, just ignore it. Because I think we mentioned the Brighton game and how it's a must-win, which we did win, but of course you'll know that now. But yeah, just a disclaimer that this was recorded the day before the Brighton game. I think it was a Friday. So yeah, if you hear that, just a disclaimer that's the case. But Richard, very big thank you to him for coming on the podcast. It was a real pleasure to speak to him, and hopefully you learn a bit more. He's got some interesting stories to tell in this particular interview. But if you are enjoying the podcast and you want to hear more from Richard Sneekes or any other club players, comment who you'd like to see as a guest below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. However, if you're new around it, make sure you're subscribing and following, because there's another big guest coming next week. There's another big guest coming next week, and hopefully you can find more details on that on my Twitter page at the Baggies Pod or at @LouisBent_. Feel free to follow me either on them. But yes, here is my chat with Richard Sneekes. Once again, a huge thank you to him for coming on. It's a pleasure having him. Here we go. On this week's episode of the Baggies Podcast, we welcome a very, very special guest. We have former West Bromwich Albion player Richard Sneekes on the podcast. Richard, how are you?
I'm very good. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. So you obviously spent a large part of your career at the Albion. If we take a look back towards the start of your career and how things sort of took off for you in Holland, you started in the academy at Ajax, which has produced so many fantastic talents, Johan Cruyff, Dennis Bergkamp, just to name a couple. What was the whole academy experience like at Ajax?
It's unbelievable. well, everybody says they've revolutionised football. Johan Cruyff revolutionised football, but the way the academies work now, Ajax were probably the prototype of that. I started playing when I was 8 years old. Couldn't really play any earlier. In Holland, it works a little bit different. It goes over 2 age groups. So if you now it's 6 to 8. They start at 6. So you'll play 6 to 8-year-old, which are called F juniors, and so forth. Your E juniors. So 16 to 18s, under 18s, your A juniors. So when I started, it was the age 8 to 10. So I was in the E juniors, and you can't start till you get 8. So on the 30th of October, 1982. No, not 1982. See, maths. I was good at maths. So 78. Yeah, 78. I could start playing. So the back of my mum's bike. She couldn't drive a car. My father couldn't drive. So yeah, I'd had these Puma Johan Cruyffs as a 6-year-old, and when I was 8 on my birthday, I was going to get some new football boots. So yeah, really excited. Finally starting to join my new amateur club called DWS, which, if you Google it, was a very, very famous club. Champions of Holland in the 60s. Produced lots of good players like Ruud Gullit, Frank Rijkaard, and so to speak. And then amalgamated with 2 other clubs to form FC Amsterdam in 1972. So yeah, on the 30th of October, 1976, it is actually, because I was 8. My mum took me on the back of a bike, to go to my first football game. Opened up my box with my new football boots, expecting Adidas. I don't think Nike existed then, or some Pumas, and they were just plain black Chinese boots with red laces. So to say I was disappointed, I think was an understatement. John Omer always says that they were the wrong ones, but I don't really get the joke myself. But yeah, so that's where it started. Played up front, which you would call now a number 9. Was very quick, quite skillful. So scored a lot of goals. And then at the age of 14, I would have been a C junior by then, going into the B juniors. I got a phone call, not on a mobile, just on the normal turning dial phone at home, saying that I'd been scouted. Would I want to come and play for Ajax? And I wasn't one to go on my own, so I assumed that they had asked one of my better friends as well. So I rang him, and they had asked him to join as well. So I said, well, shall we just go? So we went there, and it was just phenomenal. It was at the old stadium, but the new stadium, it's not a replica of it, but the way they've structured the youth system, everything is together. The first team train where the youth train, so it gives you that bond, that harmony, that family feeling. And like I said, from the age of 14, I went there, training every day. So after school, I had to catch the tram, and go to the club. And then we had to go upstairs first. You had to go into the stadium, upstairs, and they had 3 teachers, which was unheard of. No other club had this. You had to show your diary, see what you had to do for the next day, and you had to do your homework before you were allowed to train, because they knew that, but even back then, that an academic career was as important as being a professional footballer, and that if you didn't make it, you always had to have something to fall back on. So yeah, that's how that all started. And I made my debut as a 16-year-old who was the youngest ever player to play in the first team. Not anymore. I think there's a couple that have been younger ever since. But when you what? Sometimes I don't even think it's sunk in. I'm quite laid back about these sort of things. It's other people who bring it up every now and then, and it must have been something very unrealistic as a 16-year-old to make your debut for a club that were the front runners of how Man City play, how Barcelona play. and to play in that team, who ruled the 70s, the Champions League, in 1970, 71, 72, and 74, I think, with Cruyff as the manager. It's just something that you probably, it doesn't always sink in, but now you start to think about it. It was unreal, unreal experience, and something that you'll have to treasure.
Yeah, they definitely certainly have a fantastic academy over in Ajax there, because they've produced numerous fantastic talents. And you went on actually to play in Holland for a further 10 years after your debut. I actually played for Volendam and Fortuna Sittard, I think, in the Netherlands. How was that whole experience playing in the Netherlands for 10 years? How was that?
Yeah, it was unbelievable. I made my debut at 16. I played a further 3 games for the first team. Then as I said, I was 17. I was captain of the under 21s, which we called the reserve team, and we won our regional FA Cup, the amateur cup. And if you won that, you were allowed to play in the Dutch FA Cup, so to speak. So, which was unheard of, that had never happened before. And we got to the semi-final. Mm-hmm. We beat 3 Premier League teams on the way. And I just got that taste of wanting to play first team football rather than playing on a Tuesday night, in empty stadiums. Yeah. So I signed a contract, and there was a couple of clubs that wanted to take me, and I decided to go to Volendam, which was it's a little fishing village, about half an hour's north of Amsterdam, so I didn't have to travel that far. So I played that's 34 games in the season. Played 32 games, scored 8 goals in my first season in the Dutch Premier League, and then could have gone back to Ajax and basically not start all over again, but basically be a squad player who predominantly as an 18-year-old would play in the under 21s, which is under 23s now. And I just had a taste for it, and I just wanted to play. I didn't want to wait any longer. That's why I then got transferred to Fortuna Sittard, which was a whole new experience on its own. Living on your own as a 19-year-old, when my mum had always done everything for me. And I can remember going to an international tournament in The Hague, and we got there, and as I said it then, she had forgotten my boots. You know what I mean? So. Yeah. So it teaches you valuable life lessons sometimes, but in effect, that made me look after my own stuff then. But to live on your own as a 19-year-old in your own little flat, having to care for yourself, not being able to cook, and yeah, it was very, very difficult for the first year. Not a lot of people that looked after me. I drove home every Tuesday after training. It was a 2 hours drive from down south up back to Amsterdam, and then I would drive back on Wednesday evening. And then the second year I was a lot more settled, and had 4 happy years at Fortuna Sittard.
Yeah, and you obviously that you mentioned that being such a huge challenge, living on your own, being independent, having to do things for yourself. Moving to England must have been quite a difficult experience as well, surely. You moved to Bolton in 1994. You were brought in by Bruce Rioch, in that old, I think it was the Division 1 of the Football League. How was it moving to England? What was that experience like?
Well, I'd just been to Switzerland for a year, so. We'd moved to Switzerland for a year. We had 2 young kids. My son, Giorgio, was born there. And he'd only been born for about a month in December. And the club, we just didn't make the playoffs. And they said to me, can you move on again? And we'd literally been there 4 months. That was a little bit of a kick in the teeth. So I stayed. Chairman was always messing with the money and stuff. So came back. Then there was a couple of clubs in Switzerland, but I just moved back, so I didn't want to move there. And I decided I didn't want to go back to Fortuna. So we still had a house there. We moved back, and then my agent rang and he said, "There's a club in England and a club in Spain." So I said, "Well, there's a very easy choice to make." He said, well, where do you want to go? I said, well, Spain, of course. You know what I mean? You know, it's sunshine, sangria, beaches,
Yes.
paella. What more do you want? He said, no, you're going to Bolton. So I've sorted it all out. So yeah, flew to Aberdeen. Got the bus. First game, played Dunfermline in Perth, I think it's called. And I just didn't know what hit me. 120 miles an hour, ball was flying everywhere. And the chief scout came up to me, Dixie McNeil, and said, we know you're a good player. We've got to show a lot more. So then we played Ross County, won 3-1. I scored 2. And then we played Inverness Caledonian Thistle, who were then in the second division in Scotland, but both in the Premier League now or in the first division. Won 5-2, and I scored 1. And the deal was done. Flew back to Holland. I sorted out a transfer fee, and came over. And it was brilliant. Bruce was brilliant. Well, he was brilliant to me. You know, if he didn't like you, it was difficult. It could be a really difficult time for you. But no, he liked me. I had a fantastic first year. People in Holland said I couldn't head the ball. I couldn't tackle. I probably couldn't. As people will probably remember. And said I would be back within 3 weeks because I wouldn't be able to cope. I wasn't the sort of player that could play in England. And first year we got to the playoffs and we got promotion to the Premier League, and we got to the final of which was then the Coca-Cola Cup final, the League Cup, against Liverpool at Wembley. So my first year in English football was, unbelievable. Just couldn't have gone any better. It was completely different than what I got used to in Holland. In Holland, if you kick off at 3 o'clock, you meet at the club for 12, and there's pieces of paper, which is all different now, of course. Pieces of paper with running lines, with passing lines, or how the opposition play, what we've got to do, what we've got to do to stop them, what we've got to do to expose them. And then you come to England, and it's a 3 o'clock kickoff, and see you at 1:30, 1:45, and then there's a list with 14 names on the wall, and then next to it there's another 3 or 4 names, who pick up from set pieces, and that was it, and that was literally it. Then everybody the ghetto blaster would come on, people would go and have showers, go in the bath, and I was like, what is going on? But no, I really like that side, the laid backness, and just go out and enjoy yourself. Everybody played 4-4-2, so tactically it was make sure you're better than your opponents, and the more are better than their opponents, we've got a bigger chance of winning. And football has changed a lot in the last 20 years with that, in that respect.
And you mentioned the League Cup final there in 1995. You played against a fantastic Liverpool side managed by Roy Evans at the time, with Steve McManaman, John Barnes. What was that whole? I know, unfortunately, you were on the losing side that day, but what was it like, that entire cup final experience in the League Cup?
This is something that you dream of as a young boy, and no matter whether or not you're English, you're Dutch, you're German, you're French. When I was young, Wembley was the holy grail. That was, I would, FA Cup day, I would stay at home and watch it on Belgium television because Dutch television wouldn't show it. And just the Twin Towers and walking up, and that is, I think for back then, in the 70s and the 80s, Wembley was the absolute holy grail of any aspiring young player. No matter where you are in the world, Wembley, that was where you wanted to play. And to experience that a couple of times. I'd experienced it as a 15-year-old with the Netherlands under 15s against England under 15s. It wasn't a very good experience, I have to say. I was a number 10 for Ajax, and our national team coach thought it would be a good option to play me at number 2 at right back. So yeah, that was the first shock. Then I nearly got arrested on the bus. A Bobby stopped the bus and said I'd showed my bum cheeks against the coach window, and so I was bricking it, from day one. And we lost 4-1, and my opponent England's left winger, scored 3 goals. So it's something. He then later played for Fortuna Sittard as well after me, and he lives in the same village as I do. So I come across him still now to this day when we go to the pub. So I get reminded of this story, probably once or twice a year. So it's left a really dark mark, on my playing career. But that's the first time I played at Wembley. So it's just just to experience it, just to drive up on the coach. The people are just in the streets, 7 rows deep, just driving up to Wembley, getting into the changing room, walking out of the tunnel, the flags, and it's just, that is something that just never goes away. That's something, that you dream of as a child, and that was probably the pinnacle. I could have probably stopped playing after that and be, extremely happy for the rest of my life, because that is what everybody dreams of. And this is the old Wembley, of course. I mean, it's just an unbelievable stadium. It's just something that you've got to have witnessed once in your life.
Mm-hmm. And you said you could have stopped there, but you didn't, and you later in 1996 moved to West Bromwich Albion for £400,000, which now doesn't seem particularly like a lot. It seems like a real snip at that sort of price. You were brought in by the manager at the time, who was Alan Buckley. What were your thoughts when you first joined West Bromwich Albion?
Well, it was a really, really weird thing, because Bruce had left, Colin Todd had taken over with Roy McFarland, and then Ian Porterfield came as one of the coaches as well. So the coaches that I've had in England, the legends that they are at clubs that they played for, was phenomenal. And you still had the 3 foreigners rule then.
Oh, yes,
we had a lot of injuries. So I think in total only played about 20 times in the Premier League that season. And I just had to go into Toddy's office the one day, and he said, there's 4 or 5 clubs that are interested in you. We've accepted a bid. Basically, don't want to see you back. If you come back, you'll play you'll train with the U team. I want you gone. And I was like, that was a completely new thing to me. I'd never experienced that. The English players, of course, from experience, knew that was going on, and they didn't have a problem with it. So I thought, well, if that's the way you want to play, then I'll play it at your game. So I went to watch West Brom against Port Vale at home. I think it was 1-1, and then I went to watch them in the Anglo-Italian Cup on a Tuesday, and that was against Port Vale as well. A week after, he come up to me, "What are you doing?" I said, "I've made my mind up. I want you gone. You've got to go." So it took me 2 weeks. I just thought I'd pester him a little bit. And I just had seen enough. There was enough quality in the team, who were 23rd at the time, to come and join. So yeah, first game, my wife and all the kids came up. We had a meal, and we all thought, "Hey, this is brilliant." You know what I mean? She never had that meal ever since after that, at the club. But it was a good introduction to get us over the line. And yeah, the rest is history. Magnificent club, magnificent history. Still got lots and lots of friends there. Spend a really, really happy time there, and just very, very content to be part of the history.
And I think the manager, Alan Buckley, he said something when you joined along the lines of, give him time, give him time to get things rolling. Don't expect everything straight away. Did that, when he said something like that, was that something that spurred you on? Was that something that motivated you to kick on in the way you did?
No, I didn't even know. I don't think he knew, that was, the sort of player that he brought in. I think he came and watched me once on a Tuesday night. I think I played for the reserves, and I don't think he realised, what he had brought in. He probably thought he'd brought in a good player, but not, that the other attributes that were coming with it. And it was, we just hit it off. Peter Butler came in at the same time. He got a lot of credit, has got to be given to him. But me, Andy, and Bob just hit it off. We just knew where each other were. They recognised my runs in behind, and yeah, it was just phenomenal. It's things like that don't happen very often, and when it happens, it's fantastic. But I still get stopped now. I meet people that I've never met before, and I even meet people that I've met before, and to this day, I wouldn't say it embarrasses me, but sometimes it's a little bit uncomfortable, and English people probably wouldn't understand this. The adoration, or you saved us that season, and I always say, you don't do things on your own. It doesn't make me uncomfortable, but it's just I just don't. That is just the way that I am. It's a team game. I was part in it. Yeah, I scored the goals, which then gets the plaudits, but it's a team game. We did it together. So every now and then it's still uncomfortable to listen to when people always say, just embrace it. You know what I mean? Why can't you just embrace it? But that's just the way that I was brought up. My dad just always said to me, just be normal. That's crazy enough. And that's just the way that I am. Probably a little bit too laid back. But no, it's great. It's great. I had a great time there. It's a great club with a great history. Which sometimes gets forgotten. Because we're all in the here and now, and about all the millions and the tens of thousands that everybody's earning, and we tend to forget about the fans because it's a drop in the ocean. Compare to the club get in revenue, but. They are your history. They are your future. They are your club. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
They are important.
Yeah, absolutely. And you became sort of an overnight sensation, really, at Albion when you joined, with the 10 goals in the 13 games that you scored. And it actually led to the fans as you said, taking on to you really well. They started wearing wigs in the crowd, didn't they? They started selling them in the club shop. How did you react to that, seeing everybody having your hair at the time?
Wish I'd kept one now. It's just, that's why I say I just couldn't understand. That's the part of the thing that I still, after 27 years in England, it's the thing that I don't understand. People in Holland, when we go to the game, especially when the Netherlands, when Holland are playing, you can't say Holland, you can't say Holland anymore. They don't want to be known as Holland. Have you heard?
Yes. Netherlands. It's got to be now.
It's got to be the Netherlands from now, which is difficult because I call it Holland. When Holland play, everything is orange, and everybody is so nationalistic. It's unbelievable. But for the other clubs, they wear their shirts and stuff, but out on the streets, and it's not a big deal here. I've been in the company of people who've lost relatives, people who've lost some of them lost their children, 2 days before, and go to a game, just because that's what he would have wanted, and that is the thing that I don't understand. You know what I mean? It's like a religion. It's like a relief. It's it means everything, to a lot of people, and. I'm on a group chat with a lot of West Brom fans, and when it gets to kickoff time, I'm quite laid back. Yeah, I want us to do really well, but these people really get anxious, and leading up to it, I'm nervous, days beforehand. The Wolves game was just, I've never experienced it. Well, or I have experienced, what it means to people. So, so it's. It's still 27 years been in England. It's still a weird sensation. I've got to admit to see how people adore and live for football. Day in, day out. It's beautiful. It's beautiful to see. And it's a way of life, and it's great. I think I'm just a little bit brought up a little bit more laid back.
Yeah, and a lot of fans will, of course, as you say, they have that adoration for football, but a lot of fans will have an adoration for you and the goals that you scored at the Albion. You scored hell of a lot of fantastic goals. A lot of them coming from outside the area. Really fantastic sort of thunderbolt strikes. Is that something that
Yeah.
you practiced on a lot? Is that long range shooting? Is that something that you worked on?
No, no, not at all. I think it's just probably something that you try. The amount of balls that have probably ended up in Rosette or on Halfords Lane, would have probably been, fivefold to the goals that I scored. So, it's taking a chance, and it's see, even now when I teach younger kids, it's when you hit the ball, it's going to go in. It's you're hitting the sweet spot and your body feels it. I say to young kids, don't try and kick the leather off the ball. The more power you try and put in, and sometimes it just overpowers and the ball just bobbles. You've got to try and stay relaxed. And yeah, it's great. I have to say, the feeling of a tap in or a 25-yarder, it's still a goal. It's still a great sensation. No, it's a sensation that everybody as a footballer wants to feel, because that is the pinnacle of football. Playing football is scoring goals. There's no two ways about it. I think now there's more importance put on the people that play around it, about assists and stuff. Whereas when we were playing, it was just a guy who scored, that got really, all the attention. And yeah, there's been some great goals. Like I said, you're going to ask a little bit more about what I'm doing now, but the kids at my school, they always is that they're all remote learning. So my teaching partner, she's put a couple of videos on, and the kids go, "Is that Mr. Sneekes? Is that you? You look so much different. You look so much different." So, and it always shows the Leicester goal. The ball gets stuck in the corner. People go out. And it is a special goal. That is, it's something that doesn't happen very often, and it was. It's great to be reminded of it every now and then.
Yeah, I was actually about to bring up that Leicester goal, but before you did. But would that be your favourite goal at the Albion, or would there be another one that sticks in your mind a bit better than that one?
Yeah, but Charlton at home, was an important goal. Any goal, really, that you scored, that feeling, of the ball hitting the net, and everybody looking at you and celebrating with your teammates. I can remember a tap in against Millwall when at home we won 1-0. You know what I mean? I can imagine, remember, the goal at Derby. I think it was an FA Cup game, and the coach was shouting for me to pass, and I shot, and it just flew in off the post. It's yeah. Of course, you've got favourite goals, but yeah, the Leicester is probably the most memorable.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think I've ever seen anything like. I don't think we have the stanchion anymore in the corner of the goal in modern football, but certainly seeing it get stuck there, it felt like when I was watching the video of it, it felt like the whole ground sort of froze, and then the camera sort of zooms towards it and goes, "That's still there up there." That is, but yeah, that was certainly a phenomenal goal. And how special was the experience at West Brom as a whole? How, as a whole club experience? I know you've mentioned the fans, but as a whole club, what was that experience like? How special was it for you?
Oh, it's phenomenal. It's to be able to be part of the history of such an important club in English football. It is just phenomenal. You know what I mean? It's overwhelming. It's great to have been a part of it for the best part of almost 6 years of my life. I've got lifelong friends out of it. I've got people that I'm friends with now who see me for how I am, as a person, and I think that's important as well. I don't want them to treat me as Richard, the ex West Brom player, the footballer, who could do a few things. I want them to see me for what I am, and it's a wonderful club. It is a wonderful club, and the way things are going, and we'll probably touch upon that a little bit more, a little bit later. Is difficult, for a lot of people, especially when they can't go and watch it. But also that I think the fans probably feel more and more that they're not important, and that's a very sad thing to hear.
Yeah, yeah. And moving on to how things are sort of going at the moment, you touched on it a little bit there, but you played in a struggling West Brom side. Well, at least when you arrived, it was struggling. I mean, as a team, you managed to get yourself out of that hole that was looking like your relegation was looming. But you now we're in a sort of difficult position in the Premier League. What are your thoughts on how the season and situation at the club is at the moment?
Well, it doesn't look very good, whatsoever. I think we've done some really good transfer dealings in the January transfer market, but I just think it's that little bit too late. I don't know. It's a difficult one. Everybody goes now on. Football has changed so much, over the last 20 years. You've got people that telling the manager how long a player can play based on data, and we never had data. We were not as fit as these blokes, you know what I mean, that are playing now. These guys know exactly what they need to eat, what they get to eat, and are monitored, day and night. So the thing with us was you won, you played again. It was you keep the same team, and the more you were winning, the more you would keep the same team, and that was it. I hear about schedules. We played 60 games in a season. We played Boxing Day. We played the day after. If you won on Boxing Day, you played the next day. That was just, and we didn't have any measurements of how fit you were, how fatigued you were. You just went out there, and if you couldn't go no more, the manager would realise that, or you put your hand up and you put somebody fresh on. So, now it's about rotating and got to utilise it. It's sometimes a little bit disheartening to see how which way football is moving into. You know what I mean? It's more and more starting to become a laptop sport where decisions are made based on data. And whereas that is good as well. You can't just take a player that's run 16 kilometers in a game. Because my first thing would be, can he play football? I'd rather have somebody that has an influence on the game and only runs 3 kilometers rather than somebody that runs 16 kilometers and doesn't actually have an effect on the game. So I think a lot of people are probably starting to get a little bit more disillusioned with football. But if you look at our predicament and the way that teams in and around us have been going over the last couple of weeks, you've got to say that it's going to be very, very difficult to get out of it. For me, the Burnley game should have won with 10 men, played a lot better. The next 4 games are vital. They need, in the teams in and around us, they need to win. There's nothing else is good. There is really no pressure because nobody expects us to stay up. So they might as well go out there, be on the front foot, and make sure that we keep a back 4 to defend well, and go for it because we've got nothing to lose.
Yeah, we certainly haven't. I mean, to survive relegation would really be, it'd be bigger than the Great Escape that happened in 04-05. Definitely, I think we're certainly further away than we were then. What do you think's gone wrong really this season? And there's been a few. The managerial situation has changed. What do you think? And the transfer dealings, of course, have played a big part in our situation. What do you think has gone wrong for the Albion this season?
Yeah, I think they put a lot of faith in the players that were already there. Last year in the Championship. So we've spent an awful lot of money, on players that were with us in the Championship. So we bought them. The Premier League, of course, is a completely different kettle of fish to the Championship. And then ultimately, we needed a striker, and we spent 18 million on a player that scored a lot of goals for Huddersfield. And I have to say that at times I feel really sorry for him. I don't think the new manager has put a lot of faith in him lately. I've seen him play out on the wing at times, and that must be really, really difficult coming into a club that is going to struggle, playing up front on your own, getting the ball hoofed up to you every now and then people expecting you to do something with it and make chances on your own. And I think that has been the biggest problem. Putting a lot of faith in players that were with us and good championship players. I think they found the step up to the Premier League quite hard. And then in the January transfer window, it's the same. With every club. Everybody seems to wait until the end of it to get 3 or 4 players in. I think the players that we brought in are of really good quality. Other clubs probably didn't want to lose them. Wanted to wait till the end of the transfer window to see if they could get players in to replace them. That's unfortunately the way it works. I think if we had these players at the beginning of January to bed them in, I think we might have had a little bit of a more positive scenario now. But to wait till the 31st of January, bring them in, bed them in, because you can't just throw them in. So you're another 1, 2, 3 weeks away from then, and then you are almost adrift. So yeah, very very difficult scenario. A lot of people put the onus on the owner, who's an absent owner, who wants to sell the club. So if he wants to sell the club, he's not going to invest the money that's needed to stay in and bring the quality of players in to stay up. So it's just a catalogue of things, that the managers have had to deal with. Personally, I think Slaven, probably should have had a little bit longer to turn it around. Things that must have gone on behind the scenes for them to make that decision. And the new manager's come in and he's got a great reputation of keeping teams up. I think this might even be too big for him this year.
Yeah, I certainly think that he's got the biggest job on his hands, and if he does manage to keep us up, it will certainly be the biggest saving achievement of his life, won't it?
100%.
Yeah, definitely. So, moving on to a bit of more of a positive note, who have you enjoyed watching play for West Bromwich Albion over perhaps the past couple of seasons, maybe this season? Which player have you enjoyed watching the most?
Well, I think the obvious thing would be to say Mateus Pereira. He's a player that's got something special. Everybody is talking about him. And those are the sort of players that everybody looks for because you want to be entertained. Gallagher is somebody that I've enjoyed watching. He brings a lot of energy, but also certain qualities to the team. But then the two that have surprised me most, who I've criticised in the past when I was on the radio and stuff, I think Carl Bartley has proved himself to be a real stalwart at the back, and has really made that position his own. Captain when Livermore isn't playing. But then you've got to say that the keeper, who everybody was very critical of, has done unbelievable. People are now saying he might be on the brink of playing for England. And if they went down, you have to say that he's probably one of the first ones that will be sold for a lot of money. So yeah, everybody of course will look at Pereira, but for me the two standout players this year probably got to be Bartley, and definitely Sam Johnson.
Yeah, definitely. They both really stepped it up. I think a lot of people complained about, as you said, Johnston and indeed Bartley last season, thinking they're not going to be good enough for the Premier League, but they've really stepped up and proved themselves. But with you, Richard, what sort of stuff are you up to now? I've seen you did a bit of coaching and a bit of managing after your retirement from football. But what sort of stuff are you up to now?
I've been a PE and games teacher for the last 10 years, so to speak, at a private school in Sutton Coldfield. So really enjoyable. Working with kids is probably something that I've always enjoyed. The most. Building relationships and improving their overall skill set. To give them a long and active life. And hopefully stay active in sports as well. So. That's something that I've enjoyed, and then I stopped coaching for about 2 years. And at the beginning of the season, I was asked by Tamworth to take their under-18s on, and at the same time, one of my best friends, Matt Clark, he took over at Redditch, and he he said he needed me to come and be his assistant there, which suits me. You know what I mean? So so I've gone from just teaching to all of a sudden be out and about every day of the week again. Well, not lately, of course. And then I do, you know, bits and pieces. The radio that's stopped now since March 2020. So I haven't done that for a year. That's something that I have really enjoyed, you know, with WM, with Franksy and Rigo. That's always something that I've really looked forward to, and it gives you the confidence, you know, to speak with people. Not that I'm a shy guy, but you know, in front of people, you know, in company, in bigger company, you know. So you know, I find that to be really, really beneficial. But yeah, teaching is my main job, and you know, it's something that I've enjoyed doing. You know, not remote learning. It's a little bit more difficult. I think, you know, in lockdown 1, I think everybody was going, "Oh, this is one big long holiday. This is great." But by now, the pupils and the staff, and me included, we've just had enough of it. You know, I can see people struggling with mental health. It's something that I'm really interested in as well. You know, I've done some courses, doing a course on counselling, because I can see, you know, this being a problem, you know, for the future. And you know, if I'm not able to teach anymore, it's probably something that I would like to go into to still help, you know, young people, children, adolescents, you know, to deal with day-to-day life. Because, you know, even though this might be over soon, you know, the long-term effects of this pandemic, you know, I don't think we've seen the end of that. So that is something that I'm interested in, and hopefully we'll work in. And you know, football is just a side thing for me.
Yes, yeah. Well, hopefully, with regards to people's well-being, hopefully this podcast, as speaking to you, has helped a lot of people. You know, bring a smile to their faces hearing from you after your fantastic days at the Albion. But Richard, it's been a pleasure having you on the Baggies podcast this week. It really has been an honour for me to speak to you. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I hope that people are sick and tired of my voice after this.
So that was Richard Sneekes on the Baggies podcast. Never did I think I'd be saying that. I had to go and get, as you could see behind me, I got in and got my large signed picture of him to show him. Yeah, but he's a lovely guy, and as of course you'd expect, a class act, and obviously loves West Bromwich Albion quite a lot. So it's a pleasure to have him on the podcast. Hopefully, you know, he might like to come on again. But yes, that was his thoughts on the current crop of players, his stories from his career. If you're new around here, make sure you're following and subscribing to the podcast, because there's more of that. Well, more where that came from. Because honestly, there is. I promise you, there is more where that came from. But I'd like to thank you very much for listening to the podcast this week. It's been a pleasure having you. My longest episode, yes, actually. But if you want to leave us a review, just simply on that podcast, on Apple Podcasts, you can drop us a review or leave us a comment on YouTube. Just do it. It's fun. You know, boost morale and all that. But yes, in this difficult time, it's fantastic to hear from Sneeksy. Hopefully it's cheered a lot of you up and, you know, got you thinking about more positive times ahead. However, that brings us to the end of episode 35 of the Baggies podcast, featuring Albion legend and cult hero Richard Sneekes. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye, guys. See you later. Have a good week.